The rain hammered against the patchwork metal roof of Flora's shelter, each drop finding its way through the countless gaps in the corroded panels. She huddled in the corner of what the other species in the refugee quarter called housing, though it barely qualified as a shed. Her scales, once iridescent blue like her mother's, had dulled to a murky grey from malnutrition and stress. At barely 14 cycles old, she was the last of her kind on this forsaken station. The Draconians had been magnificent once. Flora remembered the stories her mother told before the plague took her, tales of crystal cities that sang in the solar winds, of ships that could dance between stars. But that was before the sovereignty decided that a species of only 10 million wasn't worth the resources to save. The quarantine had been absolute. The extinction nearly complete. Another drop of frigid water splashed onto Flora's snout. She whimpered, pulling her thin thermal blanket tighter. The station's environmental systems worked fine in the proper sectors, where the Valorians and Kresh lived in their climate-controlled apartments. Here in Sector 7, the temporary refugee zone that had been temporary for 30 years, you were lucky if the air processes prevented you from suffocating. A knock on her door made Flora's head snap up. Nobody knocked on her door. The other refugees had learned to keep their distance from the last draconian plague survivor, meant plague carrier in their eyes, no matter what the medical scans said. Flora. A voice called. Human-accented galactic standard. It's Eric from next unit. Your roof sounds like it's about to give up completely. She didn't answer. Humans were new to the galactic community, barely 2 generations since first contact. Most species saw them as primitives playing at civilization, useful only for their willingness to take jobs others wouldn't. Eric worked in the station's waste reclamation essentially, sifting through garbage for recyclables. Not exactly the prestigious career path of the Valorian engineers or Kresh physicians. I've got some sealant and spare panels, Eric continued. Salvaged them from the disposal. Won't cost you anything. Can I come up? Flora's shelter was built on stilts above the sector's main walkway, a modification her mother had made when she was still alive. The ladder rungs were spaced for draconian limbs too. Far apart from most species, she heard the distinctive sound of human problem-solving, grunting, scraping, and what sounded like Eric stacking crates to reach her door. Despite herself, Flora cracked it open. Eric stood on a precarious tower of containers, a toolbox in one hand and a bundle of metal sheets strapped to his back. He was young for a human adult, with brown skin slicked with rain and dark hair plastered to his forehead. His coveralls were patched and repatched, but his eyes were warm. That's a hell of a climb, he said, grinning. No wonder you get privacy. Most species would need a crane. Why? Flora asked, her voice rusty from disuse. Why what? Why help me? Eric shrugged, rainwater cascading off his shoulders. Because your roof is leaking and I can fix it. Do I need a better reason? In Flora's experience, yes. Everything in the galaxy had a price, a favor owed, an angle. The sovereignty had taught her that lesson thoroughly, but she stepped aside. Eric worked for 3 hours straight. Flora watched, fascinated despite herself, as he assessed each leak with careful attention, sealed gaps with a precision that seemed unnecessary for such crude materials, and reinforced weak points she hadn't even noticed. He worked like every repair mattered, like her scrap metal shelter was a Valorian embassy. You're very thorough, Flora observed, as Eric waterproofed his 20th seam. My dad was a carpenter, Eric said, not looking up from his work. He used to say you can tell everything about a person by how they treat things others think are worthless. A job worth doing is worth doing right, even if nobody's watching. Your father sounds wise. He died in the mining accident on Luna 7. That's why I'm here. Station work pays enough to send money back to my mum and sisters. Flora's tail curled with a pang of recognition. You're supporting your family alone. Someone has to. Eric moved to the next section. What about you? This place is set up for at least 2 people. My mother, Flora said quietly. She died last year. The plague. Eric's hands stilled. I'm sorry. Those 2 words, simple and sincere, cracked something inside Flora's chest. The sovereignty administrators had logged her mother's death with clinical efficiency. The medical staff had disposed of the body with sanitary protocol. The housing authority had given her 30 days to vacate before they realized nobody wanted to move into a plague victim's home anyway. Nobody had said they were sorry. The sovereignty left your people to die. Eric said, resuming his work, but with an edge to his voice. I read about it. They had the resources to help. They chose not to. We were too few to matter. The cost-benefit analysis didn't favor intervention. That's the most evil thing I've ever heard said in such a calm voice. Eric secured another panel. Humans have a saying, we leave no one behind. It's more aspiration than reality sometimes, but we try. Humans are considered primitive by most species. Yeah, well, maybe being primitive means we haven't learned to calculate whether a life is worth saving. He sat back, surveying his work. There should hold through the season at least. Probably longer. Flora looked up. Her roof, which had been more hole than shelter, was now sealed and reinforced. It looked almost professional. I can't pay you, she said. Didn't ask you to. Why? She asked again, more desperately this time. Why do you care? You don't know me. My species is dead. I'm just a kid whose roof was leaking. Eric started packing his tools. That's all the reason I need. That's all the reason anyone should need. He climbed down his makeshift ladder, then paused to look back up at her. I'm making stew tomorrow night. Real vegetables, not protein paste. You're welcome to join Unit 7B for no obligations, no strings. Just food. Flora watched him trudge away through the rain, which no longer fell inside her home. That night, for the first time in months, she slept without water dripping on her scales. And the next evening, she found herself standing outside Unit 7B for her claws hovering over the door panel. She knocked. Eric opened the door, smiled like her presence was the most natural thing in the galaxy, and said, "Come in. Hope you like carrots." The sovereignty had left her people to die with efficiency and logic. A human had fixed her roof because it was leaking. Flora decided that maybe being primitive wasn't such a bad thing after all.